My niece stood in my living room, holding a stack of legal documents and a pen. The same living room where I'd raised my kids, the same house I'd owned for 42 years. She smiled at me the way you smile at a dog you're about to put down. "Just sign these, Uncle Harry. It's for the best, and Edna's already agreed to everything." I looked at the papers. Deed transfer, power of attorney modifications, bank authorizations, all of it designed to take everything I'd ever worked for and hand it to her on a silver platter. I looked up at Missy, the girl I'd bounced on my knee when she was 3, the girl whose wedding I'd paid for when her deadbeat father couldn't, the girl I'd trusted with my wife's care. And I smiled right back at her. "Check your phone, Missy. You're going to want to see the message I just sent." Her phone buzzed in her purse. She hesitated, then pulled it out. Her eyes scanned the screen, and I watched the color drain from her face like water down a sink. What was in that message? I'll tell you. But first, you need to understand how a 76-year-old diner cook figured out that his own niece was trying to steal everything, including his wife. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you treated like your own child? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe that getting older should never make you an easy target, subscribe to John Vengeance, because this story, it's just getting started. My name is Harold Cosgrove. Most people call me Harry. I'm 76 years old, and for 38 of those years, I ran a little place called Harry's Grill on Tuscarawas Street in Canton, Ohio. Nothing fancy, burgers, eggs, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The kind of place where steel workers came before their shifts and cops came after theirs. I opened that diner in 1978 with $6,000 I'd saved from working the line at Republic Steel and a loan from my father-in-law that took me 12 years to pay back. I flipped my first burger on a Tuesday morning, and I flipped my last one on a Friday afternoon in 2016. 38 years. Same griddle, same counter, same booth where my wife Edna used to grade her students' papers while I closed up. Edna. Let me tell you about Edna. She was a third-grade teacher at Duber Elementary for 31 years. Sweetest woman you ever met. Patient like a saint. She taught 3 generations of Canton kids to read, and half of them still stopped by the diner to say hello, even after they'd grown up and had kids of their own. We got married in 1971, 53 years now. She gave me 2 sons, both good men, both moved out of state for work. And she gave me something else, a reason to come home every night. 5 years ago, Edna was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. She was 68. There was a news article I almost scrolled past that morning. Looking back, I'm grateful I didn't. That article would blow everything wide open, but I'll get to that. The diagnosis hit us like a truck. At first, it was little things. Forgetting where she put her keys, calling our son Mark by his brother's name, leaving the stove on. But it got worse, fast. By year 2, she didn't always know what year it was. By year 3, she had trouble recognizing our house. And by year 4, there were days she didn't recognize me. I closed the diner to take care of her, sold the equipment, let the lease go. 38 years of my life, and I walked away without looking back. Because Edna needed me more than those burgers ever did. We weren't rich, never had been. Social Security, a small pension from my union days before I went independent, and whatever we'd managed to save. Most of that savings went to Edna's care, medications, specialists, all the things Medicare doesn't quite cover. But we owned our house outright, paid off the mortgage in 2004. And here's the thing about that house. When I bought it in 1982, the neighborhood was nothing special. Working-class families, small yards, nothing fancy. But over the years, Canton started changing. A developer bought up the old factory land 2 blocks over, built condos, then a shopping center went in. Suddenly, my little 3-bedroom house on Maple Avenue was worth $425,000, maybe more. I didn't think much about it. What was I going to do? Sell the place? It was Edna's home. It was our home. But someone else had been thinking about it.
thinking about it a lot. My brother Frank died 9 years ago, heart attack at 62. He was the wild one in the family, always chasing some scheme, always borrowing money he couldn't pay back, but he was my brother and I loved him. When he died, I promised myself I'd look out for his daughter, Melissa. Everyone called her Missy. Stop. I need you to understand something. When you run a diner for 38 years, you learn to read people. Every customer who sits at your counter tells you a story, whether they mean to or not. The nervous husband waiting for his girlfriend to show up before his wife gets off work. The kid who's been crying and orders coffee he doesn't drink. The businessman whose smile doesn't reach his eyes. You learn the difference between people who are honest and people who are performing. Every liar has a tell. I just never thought I'd need to use those skills on my own family. Missy was 44 years old, married to a man named Greg, nice enough guy, worked in insurance. They had 2 kids in middle school. From the outside, they had the perfect life. Nice house in the suburbs, vacations to Florida, pictures on Facebook of Missy in designer sunglasses, holding cocktails at some country club. When Edna got sick, Missy stepped up. So I thought. She started visiting every week, bringing groceries, helping Edna with her hair, taking her to appointments when I had my own doctor's visits. She called herself our family support system. "Let me help with the finances, Uncle Harry. You've got enough on your plate. I can handle the bills, make sure everything's organized." I should have said no, but I was exhausted. Edna was up 3 times the night before, confused and scared. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in months, and here was my niece, Frank's little girl, offering to take something off my plate. I let her get added to our bank accounts, just in case of emergency, she said. I signed papers she put in front of me. Just routine stuff, Uncle Harry, legal protections for Aunt Edna. I trusted her. That was my mistake. 3 months before that scene in my living room, the one with the documents and the phone message, I was sitting at my kitchen table, eating oatmeal and scrolling through the news on my tablet. Edna had taught me to use the thing years ago, before her mind started slipping. Now it was my connection to the outside world. A headline caught my eye. Columbus property fraud ring busted. 6 arrested. I almost scrolled past. What did property fraud in Columbus have to do with me? But something made me stop. One of the mugshots looked familiar. A man in his 50s with a weak chin and slicked back hair. His name was Derek Loomis. I stared at that face for a long time. Where had I seen him before? That night, after I got Edna settled in bed, I went through the photos on my tablet. Hundreds of pictures from the last few years. Birthdays, holidays, and there it was. Last Thanksgiving, the whole family gathered at Missy's house, and in the corner of one photo, almost cropped out, was Missy with her arm around a man, Derek Loomis. I remembered now. Missy had introduced him as a friend from the gym. He'd stayed for about an hour, shook a few hands, then left before dinner. A friend from the gym, who was now in jail for running a property fraud ring in Columbus. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the papers I'd signed, all the times Missy had said, "Don't worry about the details, Uncle Harry." All the times Edna had seemed confused after Missy's visits, more confused than usual, I mean. I thought about something Edna had said a few weeks ago, one of her lucid moments. She'd grabbed my hand and looked at me with those beautiful brown eyes and said, "Harry, I don't like it when Missy whispers." Whispers about what, honey? But she was already gone again, drifting off to wherever her mind went when the disease took over. Whispers about what? Maria Santos came into our lives about a year after Edna's diagnosis. She was 52 years old, originally from the Philippines, hardest working person I'd ever met. She worked 3 different healthcare jobs to support her family, and she never complained about any of it. But more than that, she was kind. She treated Edna like a person, not a patient. Talked to her, sang to her, held her hand when she was scared. A few days after I saw that news article, Maria arrived for her shift and found me sitting at the kitchen table staring at my laptop. "Mr. Harry, you okay?" I looked up at her. I'd never told anyone what I was thinking, but something about the concern in her eyes made me trust her. "Maria, can you help me with something? I need to look at my bank accounts online. I never really learned how to do it." She sat down next to me and walked me through the login process, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There were transactions I'd never authorized, small at first, 500 here, 1,000 there, all labeled household expenses. But then they got bigger, 5,000,
12,000, 20,000 in a single transfer, dated just 3 weeks ago. "Who made these?" I asked, my voice shaking. Maria pointed at the screen. "It says here, Mr. Harry, authorized by M. Daniels." M. Daniels. Melissa Daniels. Missy. I did the math in my head. Over the past 14 months, she'd taken nearly $47,000 from our accounts. Maria showed me something in her notebook that made my hands shake. I'm going to tell you exactly what she documented, but what we found next made that look like nothing. See, Maria had been keeping notes. She hadn't told me because she wasn't sure, didn't want to cause trouble. But she'd noticed things. The way Missy talked to Edna when she thought no one was listening. "You're so confused, Aunt Edna. You can't trust your own memory. Uncle Harry's been so angry lately, hasn't he? You're scared of him, aren't you? It's okay to admit it." She'd been coaching my wife, planting ideas in her confused mind, making her afraid of me. Maria had written down dates, times, exact words she'd overheard, and then she told me about something she'd witnessed just a week before I saw that article. Missy brought papers for Mrs. Edna to sign, but Mrs. Edna was having a bad day. She didn't know where she was, and Maria hesitated. Missy guided her hand, held the pen with her, made her write her name. Forged signatures, using my wife's illness as cover. I called Ed Mackey the next morning. Ed was an old customer from the diner days, came in every Saturday for the same thing, 2 eggs over easy, rye toast, and black coffee. He'd been a family attorney in Canton for 40 years. I trusted him. "Ed, I need copies of every legal document connected to me and Edna. Everything. And I need you to look at them." 2 days later, Ed called me back. His voice was strange, tight. "Harry, we need to talk. Can you come to my office?" I drove over that afternoon. Ed was sitting behind his desk with a stack of papers in front of him and a look on his face I'd never seen before. "These power of attorney documents," he said slowly. "I didn't prepare them." "What do you mean?" "I mean they're on official-looking letterhead, but they didn't come through my office. I never drafted them. I never filed them. Someone else created these documents and forged both your signature and Edna's." The POA documents gave Missy full control over Edna's medical and financial decisions, and according to the dates on them, they'd been signed during a period when Edna couldn't have understood what she was agreeing to. Missy had manufactured legal control over my wife. I thought about the man in the news article, Derek Loomis, the property fraud ring, Missy's arm around him at Thanksgiving. "Ed," I said, "I think my niece is trying to steal my house." Ed nodded grimly. "I think you might be right, but we need proof, real proof." That's when I remembered Pete Kowalski. Pete used to come into the diner after his shift, retired forensic document examiner for the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, spent 30 years analyzing handwriting, detecting forgeries, testifying in court. He'd moved to a little house on the edge of town after his wife passed. I called him that evening. "Pete, I need a favor. It's about some signatures. I think they might be forged." Pete Kowalski spread the documents across his kitchen table, put on his reading glasses, and went silent for 3 full minutes. He examined the signatures with a magnifying glass, compared them to old Christmas cards and checks I'd brought, samples of Edna's real handwriting before she got sick. Then he looked up at me and said 5 words that changed everything. "Harry, these are traced forgeries." He explained it to me. The signatures weren't written naturally. They were traced. Someone had placed Edna's genuine signature underneath and copied it. But tracing always leaves tells. The pen pressure is wrong. The line quality is off. Hesitation marks appear in places where a natural signature flows smoothly. "I can testify to this," Pete said. "In court, under oath, these signatures are not authentic. Someone committed fraud." I sat in Pete's kitchen, looking at the evidence spread across his table, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. But I knew I had to be careful. Missy was smart. She'd covered her tracks, and if she found out I was on to her before I had everything in place, she'd find a way to stop me. Ed Mackey did more digging. He pulled property records and ran Missy's name through public databases. What he found made the picture crystal clear. 3 weeks after that $20,000 transfer from my account, Missy put a down payment on a vacation condo in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, a condo that cost exactly $18,000 down. She was spending my money on beach property. But that wasn't all. Ed found credit card debt, massive credit card debt, $185,000 spread across 8 different cards, a second mortgage on her house that Greg didn't seem to know about, bills from designer clothing stores, invoices from a country club. All those pictures on Facebook of the perfect life, they were a lie, every single one. Missy was drowning in debt, and my house, worth $425,000, was her life raft. She wasn't helping us. She was robbing us, slowly, systematically, and using my wife's illness as her cover. I had the evidence, but I knew Missy wouldn't go down without a fight. I just didn't know how dirty she was willing to fight. The first thing I did wrong was confront her too soon. I should have waited. Should have gathered more evidence, should have lined up all my ducks before I said a word. But I was angry. $47,000. Forged documents. My wife being manipulated. I was 76 years old and running on no sleep and pure fury. I called Missy and asked her to come over. "We need to talk about the accounts," I said. Tried to keep my voice calm. Failed. She showed up an hour later, all smiles and concern. "What's wrong, Uncle Harry? You sounded upset on the phone." "I looked at the bank statements, Missy. I saw the transfers. $47,000. Where did it go?" Her face didn't change, not even a flicker. "Uncle Harry, we talked about this. Those were household expenses, medical bills, things for Aunt Edna. I kept all the receipts." "Show me." "They're at my house. I'll bring them next time." "And the power of attorney documents, the ones I never signed?" Now something shifted in her eyes, just for a second, a flash of something cold. But then the mask came back, and she shook her head sadly. "Uncle Harry, you did sign them, don't you remember? It was right after Aunt Edna's last hospital stay. You were exhausted. Maybe you forgot." She reached out and touched my arm. "This is what I was worried about. You've been under so much stress. Maybe you're not remembering things clearly." She was gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt my own mind. And the worst part, for just a moment, it almost worked. I was tired. I was old. What if I had signed those papers and forgotten? But then I remembered Pete Kowalski's words. Traced forgeries, hesitation marks, unnatural pen pressure. I didn't sign anything, and she knew it. "Get out of my house, Missy." She left, but she didn't look worried. She looked like someone who just realized she needed to move faster. I'm telling you this because maybe someone watching right now is going through the same thing. That moment when you realize someone you love, someone you helped raise, has been lying to your face for years. I felt like the world's biggest fool. I'd trusted her, defended her to people who'd warned me she was just like her father, and all along she'd been picking my pockets and poisoning my wife's mind against me. But the worst was coming yet. 3 days after our confrontation, I got a call from Janet. Janet was Missy's mother, my brother Frank's widow. We'd always gotten along. She'd been there when Frank died, when Missy got married, through all the family holidays and Sunday dinners. "Harry, I'm worried about you." "Worried about me? Janet, your daughter has been stealing from us. I have proof, bank records, forged documents." "Harry, stop." Her voice was sharp. "Missy told me you'd say this. She told me the stress has been getting to you, that you've been having memory problems, that you've been aggressive." "Aggressive? Janet, I've never—" "She said you grabbed Edna's arm last week, left a bruise." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "That's a lie. I would never hurt Edna. Never." "Harry, I want to believe you, but Missy says Edna is scared of you. She says Edna told her she doesn't feel safe." "Edna has Alzheimer's, Janet. Missy has been whispering things to her, confusing her, making her say things that aren't true." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. When Janet spoke again, her voice was sad. "I think you need help, Harry, professional help. Missy's going to take care of Edna for a while,
But Greg was a big man, and the health worker was already gathering Edna's things, and Missy was standing there with her phone in her hand, ready, I realized, to call 911 if I made a scene. They'd planned this, all of it. "It's okay, Edna," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "You're going to stay with Missy for a little while. I'll come see you soon." "Promise?" "I promise." Missy smiled at me as she guided Edna toward the door. It was the same smile she'd given me when she was 8 years old and had just gotten away with something, the smile of a liar who thinks she's won. A few days turned into a week turned into 2. Every time I called, Missy had an excuse. "Aunt Edna's resting. She's having a bad day. The doctor says too much excitement isn't good for her." I drove to Missy's house 3 times. The first time, no one answered the door. The second time, Greg told me Edna was sleeping and I should come back later. The third time, I saw Edna through the window, sitting in an unfamiliar room, staring at nothing, alone, and I lost it. I pounded on the door, demanded to see my wife, told Greg I wasn't leaving until I talked to her. And that's when Missy called the police. The officer handed me the restraining order. I was legally banned from seeing my own wife. Missy stood behind him, crying her crocodile tears, holding a piece of paper she said was a statement from Edna. "He pushed me," it supposedly said. "I'm afraid of him." I knew that handwriting. I'd seen it before on the forged POA documents. Traced, manufactured, fake. But the officer didn't know that. He just saw a crying woman and an angry old man, and he made his decision. "Mr. Cosgrove, you need to stay at least 500 feet from this residence. Any violation, and you'll be arrested." I looked past him at Missy. She wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling. And I realized she was going to win. She had my wife. She had control of the accounts. She had the legal documents. And now she had a restraining order that painted me as an abuser. Unless I did something drastic. If you're still here following this story, hit the like button so more people can see it. Now here's how I turned everything around when they thought they had already won. I drove home in a daze, sat in my empty living room, the room where Edna and I had spent 53 years together, and I cried. For the first time since her diagnosis, I let myself fall apart. But only for one night. The next morning, I called Ed Mackey. "Ed, I need to file an emergency motion to challenge this restraining order, and I need to do it fast." "On what grounds?" "The statement from Edna, it's forged. Pete Kowalski can prove it. Same handwriting analysis he did on the POA documents. Traced signatures. The statement is fake."
Ed was quiet for a moment. "Harry, if we can prove the statement is fraudulent, that's filing a false police report. That's a crime." "I know. And if we can tie it to the forged POA documents and the financial fraud, that's what I'm counting on." Ed got to work. He filed the emergency motion. He submitted Pete Kowalski's affidavit. He requested a hearing to challenge the restraining order based on evidence that the victim's statement was fabricated. Meanwhile, Maria was still working her shifts, but now she was working them at Missy's house. Missy had hired her, not realizing that Maria was the one who'd helped me uncover the fraud in the first place. She thought she was getting a compliant caregiver. She got a spy. Maria called me every night with updates. Edna was confused but physically okay. Missy was keeping her isolated, medicated, quiet, and Missy was having lots of phone conversations with a man named Derek. Derek Loomis, the property fraud guy, still out on bail, still operating. Missy called to invite me to a family meeting at my own house. She thought I was broken, defeated. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 weeks setting up something she never saw coming. The hearing to challenge the restraining order was scheduled on a Monday, but on the Friday before, Missy called with her invitation. "Uncle Harry, I've been thinking. This has all gotten out of hand. Let's sit down like a family and work things out. I'll bring Aunt Edna. We can talk about the house, the finances, everything. Clear the air." The house, the finances. She was ready to make her final move. She wanted me to sign over the property before the hearing could expose her. "Okay, Missy," I said. "Let's do that. How about Sunday afternoon?" "Perfect. I'll bring the whole family. Mom, Greg, the kids. We'll make it a real gathering." She thought I sounded defeated because I was defeated. She didn't realize I sounded defeated because I was acting. I called Ed Mackey. Then I called Pete Kowalski. Then I called Detective Sharon Willis of the Canton Police Department, who had been quietly investigating the connection between Missy and the Columbus property fraud ring for the past 2 weeks. Sunday afternoon, everyone was coming to my house, and I was going to be ready. This is where I turned the tables. After 76 years, you learn that patience isn't weakness, it's a weapon, and I was about to show Missy how sharp that weapon could be. They arrived at 2 o'clock. Missy came in first, all smiles and false concern. Greg followed with the kids, looking uncomfortable. Janet came in behind them, avoiding my eyes. And then, finally, there was Edna, guided through the door by a caregiver I didn't recognize. My wife looked thin, pale. Her eyes darted around the room like she wasn't sure where she was. But when she saw me, something flickered across her face. "Harry?" "I'm here, honey. I'm right here." Missy stepped between us. "Let's all sit down and talk like adults, okay? Uncle Harry, I know things have been tense, but we're family. We can work this out." She pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, deed transfer forms, bank authorizations, all requiring my signature. "I've been talking to some developers. They're very interested in this property. If we sell now, we can get top dollar, enough to move Aunt Edna to a really nice facility, somewhere with full-time care." "A facility," I repeated. "It's for the best. You can't take care of her alone anymore, Uncle Harry. You've proven that." I looked at the documents, looked at Missy's expectant face, looked at my wife, confused and scared in her own living room. "Before I sign anything," I said slowly, "I want to ask you a question, Missy." "Of course." "Who is Derek Loomis?" The room went very quiet. Missy's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went flat. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really, because I have a photograph from last Thanksgiving. You introduced him as a friend from the gym. Funny thing is, he's currently out on bail for running a property fraud ring in Columbus, the same kind of fraud that involves forging documents to steal real estate from elderly people." Janet's head snapped up.
Harry, what are you— I'm not finished. I pulled out my own folder. I also have bank records showing $47,000 in unauthorized transfers from my accounts, transfers authorized by you, Missy. I have copies of power of attorney documents that my attorney never prepared and never filed, documents that forensic analysis has proven contain forged signatures. I placed Pete Kowalski's affidavit on the table. And I have a sworn statement from a certified forensic document examiner confirming that my wife's signatures on these documents were traced, faked, just like the victim's statement you used to get that restraining order. Missy stood up. Her face had gone white. This is ridiculous. You're paranoid. You're senile. Mom, tell him— Sit down, Missy. The voice came from the doorway. Detective Sharon Willis stepped into the room, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Melissa Daniels, you're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, forgery, filing a false police report, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. You have the right to stay silent. Missy's mask finally cracked. She screamed, actually screamed, and tried to run for the back door. One of the officers caught her before she made 3 steps. This is a setup. He planned this. Mom, Greg, do something. But Greg was staring at the bank records I'd put on the table. His face had gone gray. Missy, he said quietly, what is all this? What did you do? It's nothing. He's lying. He's a crazy old man. Detective Willis held up a clear evidence bag. Inside was a cell phone. We've recovered text messages between you and Derek Loomis. You discussed targeting your uncle's property specifically. You shared information about his wife's condition and how to exploit it. You planned this together. Missy stopped struggling. For a moment, she just stared at me, and in her eyes I saw something I never expected. Hatred. Pure hatred for me. The uncle who had paid for her wedding, who had helped her through her father's death, who had trusted her with his wife's care. You should have just signed the papers. You should have just died like you were supposed to.
It was the first real smile I'd seen from her in months. I want to go home, she said. You are home, I told her. You're home. The legal process took 8 months. 8 months of depositions, hearings, motions, and court dates. 8 months of watching my niece's carefully constructed life fall apart piece by piece. The charges against Missy were extensive. Elder abuse, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, forgery, filing a false police report, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. The prosecutor told me it was one of the most comprehensive elder fraud cases he'd seen in Stark County in 20 years. Derek Loomis flipped on her almost immediately. Turned out Missy wasn't just his accomplice, she was the one who'd brought him the idea in the first place. She'd met him at a financial seminar 2 years earlier, back when she was first drowning in credit card debt. He'd told her about the opportunities in elder real estate. She'd told him about her uncle with the valuable property and the wife with Alzheimer's. They'd planned the whole thing together. Every forged document, every manipulated conversation with Edna, every lie to the family. All of it designed to get control of my house and sell it to a developer who was also connected to their fraud ring. The developer, by the way, turned out to be laundering money for a group out of Cleveland. When the FBI got involved, the whole thing unraveled faster than a cheap sweater. Missy's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecutor wasn't interested at first. He wanted to make an example. But I asked him to consider it, not for Missy's sake, for her kids. They were 12 and 14 years old, and they'd already lost their mother to handcuffs. They didn't need to sit through a trial and hear every ugly detail. In the end, Missy pleaded guilty to elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in the Ohio Reformatory for Women, followed by 5 years of probation. She was ordered to pay $47,000 in restitution, every penny she'd stolen from us. Her real estate license was permanently revoked, and she was barred from any contact with me or Edna for 10 years.
Greg filed for divorce before the sentencing. He'd had no idea about any of it. The debt, the fraud, the second mortgage on their house. He thought they were living the American dream. Instead, he'd been married to a con artist. He got full custody of the kids, moved them to a smaller house on the other side of Canton, started over. I don't blame Greg. He was a victim too. Janet, Mrs. Mother, my sister-in-law, came to see me a week after the arrest. She stood on my porch with tears streaming down her face, unable to look me in the eye. Harry, I am so sorry. I believed her. I believed every word she said. I thought you thought I was hurting Edna. She nodded, sobbing. I should have been angry. Part of me was. But I also remembered that Janet had lost her husband, my brother Frank, and raised Missy alone. She'd wanted so badly to believe her daughter was a good person that she'd ignored every red flag. Janet, I'm not going to pretend this doesn't hurt. It does. But you didn't steal from me. You didn't forge documents. You didn't try to take my wife away. Missy did that, and she fooled both of us. I didn't invite her in that day. It was too soon. But a few months later, we had coffee together. Then dinner. We're not close like we used to be. Maybe we never will be. But we're family. And family, even broken family, means something. The cousins were split. Some of them reached out to apologize. Some of them still think I was too hard on Missy, that I should have handled it in the family instead of getting the police involved. To them, I say this. When someone exploits a woman with Alzheimer's, forges her signature, steals her money, and tries to have her husband arrested on false charges, that's not a family matter. That's a crime, and crimes have consequences. People ask me if I hate her. The truth? I hate what she did. But I also remember the little girl who used to help me flip pancakes at the diner. She'd stand on a step stool next to the griddle, and I'd let her flip the easy ones, the small silver dollar pancakes we made for kids. She'd giggle every time she got one in the air. Somewhere along the way, that little girl got lost. She got caught up in wanting things she couldn't afford. She got tangled up with the wrong people. She convinced herself that taking from family wasn't really stealing. That doesn't excuse anything. Not one thing. But it reminds me, anyone can become a victim, and anyone can become a villain. The difference is the choices we make. Edna is still with me. Some days are better than others. The Alzheimer's hasn't stopped progressing. It never does. But she's home. She's safe. She's with the man who loves her, in the house where we raised our family. Maria still comes 3 times a week. She's become more than a caregiver now. She's a friend. She brings Filipino food sometimes, dishes her mother taught her to make, and we eat together at the kitchen table while Edna hums songs she remembers from childhood. Last month, Maria told me her granddaughter is starting nursing school. I wrote her a check to help with the tuition. It wasn't much. I'm not a rich man, but Maria cried when I handed it to her. Mr. Harry, you don't have to. I told her, you saved my family. This is the least I can do. I've been doing some other things, too. The local area agency on aging asked me to speak at a senior center about elder fraud. I was nervous at first. I'm a diner cook, not a public speaker. But I told my story. All of it. And when I was done, a woman in the front row raised her hand. My grandson has been asking about my finances. He says he wants to help, but something feels wrong. I gave her Ed Mackey's card, told her to get a second opinion. Told her to trust her instincts. A month later, she sent me a note. Her grandson had been trying to get power of attorney over her accounts. Ed helped her shut it down before it got started. One person. I helped one person avoid what happened to me, and that made the whole thing worth it. Our sons flew home when they heard what happened. Mark came from Denver, Paul from Atlanta. They stayed for a week, helped me get things in order, spent time with their mother. Mark held Edna's hand and read to her from her favorite book, the same book she used to read to him when he was small. Dad, I'm sorry I wasn't here.
he said one night as Edna had gone to bed. I should have been paying more attention. I should have seen what Missy was doing. You have your own family, your own life. That's how it's supposed to be. I'm just glad you're here now. They call more often now, video calls, so Edna can see their faces. She doesn't always know who they are, but she smiles when she sees them. And that's enough. I visited Missy once in prison. It was about 6 months into her sentence. I didn't tell anyone I was going. Not Ed, not Maria, not the boys. I just drove down to Marysville one Tuesday morning and put my name on the visitors list. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Prison gray doesn't flatter anyone. When she sat down across from me, she didn't say anything at first, just stared at me with those flat eyes. "Why are you here?" she finally asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I guess I wanted to understand." "Understand what? I needed the money. You had the money. Simple as that." "That's not what I mean. I want to understand how you could do it to Edna, to me, to your own family." She laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. "You want to know the truth, Uncle Harry? I never thought you'd figure it out. I thought you were just a dumb old man who didn't understand computers. I thought I could take what I wanted and you'd never even notice." She leaned forward. "And honestly, if that health aide hadn't stuck her nose in, I would have been right." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd bounced on my knee, whose wedding I'd paid for, whose father's funeral I'd helped arrange. "You're wrong about one thing, Missy," I said. "You thought I was weak because I was old, but I ran a business for 38 years. I dealt with liars every day. Customers who said they'd pay next week, vendors who promised deliveries they couldn't make, employees who swore they weren't stealing from the register. I know what deception looks like, Missy. I just never expected to see it from you." I stood up. "I hope you find some peace in here. I hope you use this time to figure out who you really want to be. But I won't be back. Not because I don't forgive you. I'm working on that. But because I need to spend whatever time I have left with Edna. She's the one who matters now." I walked out of that prison and never looked back. Next month, Edna and I will celebrate our 54th wedding anniversary. She probably won't remember what anniversary means. She might not even recognize the date, but I'll bring her flowers anyway. Yellow roses, her favorite, and I'll hold her hand and tell her I love her, just like I have every year since 1971. The house is still ours. The developer found another property somewhere else. Our home, the one where we raised 2 boys, hosted 40 Thanksgivings, and weathered 50 years of life together, is safe. Some nights I sit on the front porch and watch the sunset over the neighborhood that's changed so much since we moved here. The old factory is gone. The condos have taken its place. The families who used to walk their kids to school have been replaced by young professionals with electric cars. But I'm still here.
Edna is still here, and that's what matters. If you're watching this and you're going through something similar, if someone in your family is pressuring you to sign papers, asking too many questions about your finances, trying to isolate you from the people you love, I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not paranoid. Trust your instincts. Get a second opinion. And don't let anyone make you feel like being old means being helpless. I'm 76 years old. I'd buried my brother, closed my business, and watched my wife's mind slip away piece by piece. And I still managed to outsmart a con artist half my age. Age isn't weakness, it's wisdom, and wisdom is a weapon they never see coming. Was I right to turn in my own niece, to send her to prison, to tear apart what was left of my brother's family? Or would you have done something different in my place? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. If this story hit close to home, if it made you think about someone in your own life, or reminded you to keep your guard up, hit that like button, subscribe to John Vengeance, and tap the bell so you never miss when justice is finally served. Stay fierce,
because every story deserves its moment of sweet revenge.